weekdays at 12 Eastern, 9 Pacific on Business News Network.
What do light bulbs, jewelry, and drill bits all have in common? Well, they all use a substance that we don't talk a whole lot about, but that represents a growing market and opportunity in Canada. It's called tungsten. Here at PDAC, it's the subject of a special presentation coming up called Talking Tungsten. We wanted to do a little talking about it ourselves, and we gathered with us a couple of the folks who know an awful lot about it. Stephen Leahy is CEO of North American Tungsten, here in production in Yukon, and we've also got with us Chris Anderson, Vice President of Geodex Mineral, exploring for tungsten in New Brunswick. Great to have both of you with us for this.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
Well, let's start with, if we're talking tungsten, what are we talking about? This is obviously something that's in wide use. Let's talk about first about the broad applications for it.
Okay. Well, tungsten is a very interesting material because it has three attributes. One, it's the hardest material on Earth beside diamond. Number two, it is melting point is 3,400 degrees Celsius, making it by far the highest melting point. And three, it's non-toxic and it's used for density.
And how much of it is there around?
Oh, there's about 80,000 pounds of tungsten is produced annually, but China controls 86% of the market.
Wow. So how much you're exploring in New Brunswick? How big a deal is it if you introduce new production, new supply into the market? What kind of a factor is that in the price?
Well, we're looking at 20,000 tons a day, and so we're looking at about 3% of the current market production is what we'd be introducing into the marketplace.
And what's the price been doing? How does it price?
The price has not really been affected like other commodities. It's because of, I think, the Chinese factor.
Yeah.
It has dropped about 12%. From $250 a unit down, about 12% down.
So does that mean that for CEOs in the business, your stocks have held up perfectly well and it's been smooth sailing?
No, we're like everyone else, we have been affected as well. But I think for our purposes, we are currently producing, and we are currently supplying about 4% of the world's supply.
Yeah.
And we'll be moving on to our big mine, the Mactung project, which over the next 5 years.
And what's the single biggest sort of challenge for you on the cost side? What gets your costs higher?
Well, really, I think the costing, because of our remote location, is fuel. Labor has been a big problem and a big cost.
Yeah.
But I think that's easing now.
Christopher, in terms of exploring for new supply, is your financing all done? It's just a matter of now sort of playing it out?
Yeah, we've taken the project up to pre-feasibility stage,
yeah.
So we'd be needing another $11 million, basically $10 million to finish up our feasibility. But we're sitting pretty good. We've got $3 million in the bank, and we've reduced our burn rate down. But we're sitting fairly well.
But you will need to go back to the market to raise capital.
When we go for our feasibility, yes.
Yes, and then presumably to actually mine the stuff, you're going to have to go back.
We'll be looking around $330 million,
yeah.
And that's got a 30% contingency fund in there. But you know, Amanda, one of the things I wanted to say, because I'm very passionate about tungsten.
Yeah.
55% of the tungsten market goes into industrial tools and cutting supplies. And if you think that the infrastructure outbuild that's going on around the globe today takes hold, and you look at how tight the tungsten market is and how prices have held up, there's going to be an awful lot of exceeded demand that's going to enter the marketplace. That's why we're excited about tungsten, and we think the price has held up somewhat well. Another interesting thing, too, is that 3% of the global supply is being introduced by the U.S.'s strategic reserves, and in 5 years, that supply is going to be eliminated, right? And China controls that market. So that's
interesting.
Yeah, that's another little key point about tungsten.
So, Stephen, if we apply that kind of rationale, that sounds pretty reasonable. What do we expect to happen to the price of tungsten over the next 5 years?
Well, I mean, we expect tungsten to move higher simply because of, A, there's been no exploration really up until, well, we started, and of course companies like Geodex also followed us.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a supply issue. So I think that's going to push the price considerably higher than it is today.
We have seen a willingness on the part of China to invest in companies in our country and to take them over. Is that something that you have had any interest about? Have you seen Chinese interest in your property?
We did have some interest prior to the recent downturn, but we think that we're going to end up with a strategic Western partner moving forward here. We think there's a need for to anchor Western supply, and so I think that's there is definitely an awful lot of interest from China.
And who are the other players, other than the guy sitting to your left, who I guess could buy you, who are the other players that might be a good strategic partner for you, for Geodex?
Well, I'm not at liberty to say that at the moment, but there are some other players that are interested in entering into the tungsten market.
Is this a well understood market by investors? When you talk to people about it, do they get it?
No, it really isn't. And simply, as I tell the story that I used to have to spell tungsten 10 years ago, but it's really not understood because it's one of the reasons it's such a small marketplace, like 80,000 tons a year production. But on the other hand, people don't understand how strategic in nature it is. It is classified by the U.S. government as a strategic metal, and there really is just not enough around. And no one in the West has really looked for it until very, very recently.
And geologically, it exists obviously in China. Does it exist everywhere, or are there specific places where we think that it is and others where it isn't?
China's got about 55% of the global supply in its region. Canada is Canada and Spain.
Yeah.
Yes. What's particularly unique about Geodex is that we've got an open pit scenario, which is quite rare for tungsten deposits.
Why is that? It's normally shaft mined?
Normally underground in remote locations.
And just before we go, how complicated is it? I don't know much about tungsten. You don't have to spell it, but almost. In terms of when you get it and how you have to refine it, what's the process? How complicated is it from a production point of view?
For us, it's not complicated, really. We basically use a crushing, grinding, and table method, and then flotation. So it's not really, but from there we make a 65% concentrate. From there, it goes into ammonium paratungstate, and then it goes into oxides, and then it goes into powder, and then it goes from there. It gets sintered onto steel.
And that's what we're using is the actual powder form.
Exactly.
Yeah. All right. It's great to have both of you with us for this.
Thank you very much.
Stephen Leahy is CEO of North American Tungsten. Christopher Anderson is Vice President of Geodex Minerals. Coming up next, so does that mean that investors should be taking a harder look at tungsten? We've got an analyst with us, and he'll walk us through